give me a minute, I'm going to um, share this, and then we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. My name is Jessica Young Brown, as you all know, and what I want to do is just kind of check in and see how people are doing in terms of their mental health as we're dealing with this COVID-19 crisis, but also spend some time talking specifically about how to manage relationships, especially for those of us who are could be stuck in the house with the folks that we love. And so I'll give people a couple minutes to hop on, and then I'll get started. So I said this last time, but I just want to say it again because I think it bears repeating that, this is kind of an unprecedented time for all of us. And I think it's really important to just allow ourselves to feel whatever we're feeling. Here in the state of Virginia, our government announced that schools were going to be shut down for the rest of the term, basically until the end of the year. Certain businesses that were deemed non-essential were going to be closed. He was going to prosecute gatherings of 10 or more people. And so what we see is the intensity of the restrictions kind of amping up. And a really important thing to keep in mind is that regardless of where we are, regardless of whatever privileges we might have, that doesn't change the fact that this is impacting us. And so sometimes we just need to take some time to acknowledge this is a lot. It is a really different way of doing things for many of us. And for many of us, there may be a lot of losses associated with this period of time. We're not able to connect with the people that we normally connect with. We are able to, see coworkers in the same way we want to. If we're thinking about folks who are in school, like, folks in high school or middle school, their school year's over. They didn't get to say goodbye to their friends. College graduates and high school graduates, the graduations are now being postponed. And so there's so many different things that are going on. And for many of us, we may just need a moment to acknowledge the grief that exists, that there's sadness associated with this. And we can understand that it's necessary. We can understand that it's something that we need to do. But it's also important for us to be able to say, this is scary for us. And sometimes that means we feel emotionally overwhelmed. I've been doing pretty well. I've been seeing my clients via telehealth. And then I think it was on Monday. Hey, Beth, y'all feel free to comment if you need to. On Monday, when our governor was giving the press conference and he was talking about all the different restrictions that are in place, it just kind of hit me like, this is not a moment that many of us have seen in our lifetime. And so I say all that to say, feel whatever feelings you are feeling. Sometimes people, unintentionally so, I think, want us to kind of pretend that everything's okay or keep it together. Hi, Camellia, is that how you say your name? Thank you. You're the second person who's told me that my voice is relaxing. Please enjoy and feel free to ask me if you have questions. People are, I think, in an effort to try to be strong or try to put on a good, say things that can be really demeaning and disheartening. Like, well, I work a lot with church folks, right? So church folks will say, well, where's your faith? Like, my faith is intact, but I'm also really scared right now, right? So I think a part of it is our ability to be able to hold all of those things, to say, I believe I will be okay. I believe my decision to stay quarantined is the best decision for me and my family. And also to say, this is really scary. I feel stuck. I don't like it. I don't know what to do. right? And so the gift of being human beings and have working minds is that we can hold things at the same time that don't seem to go together. And so for us in that moment, it means we're allowed to have mixed emotions. We're allowed to be all over the place. And my hope for each of us is that we can allow ourselves to do that in this moment. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about some tips for managing relationships, particularly while you're quarantined. But I'm keeping an eye on my comments. So if you have something that you want to ask, go ahead and ask it. So let's start by thinking about, for most of us, probably this is the beginning of maybe a couple of months of quarantine. And so no matter how much you love your family, and I'm sure most of us really love our families, around week 2 or 3, where we are now, depending on where in the country you are, you might be having an experience where you're having some challenges in your relationships with the people in your house. I'm saying that nicely, right? And so I want to just provide some tips for how you can try to manage those relationships while you're dealing with. There's a meme going around about you're safe in the house, you're not stuck in the house. So while you're being safe in the house, let's talk about some tips for how you might be able to manage. So the first thing I would say, and this is particularly the case if you have kids, but not just if you have kids, is consider having at least a loose schedule for how your days go. One of the things that can be really disorienting about this process is that every day looks the same. And I was like, is it Thursday? Is it Wednesday? What day is it? Because we're kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And so it could help to just have a loose schedule, right? So for the first hour of the day, then if you've got kids in the house, then we're going to have our homework or educational time. If you're working from home, maybe you put certain tasks in the morning, right? So it just does a couple of things. One, it helps you to kind of remain oriented, like here's what day it is a weekday or a weekend. It helps you to have some predictability in your day, which can lower the level of stress that you feel. And it can also help you to figure out transitions between activities if that's been challenging for you, okay? So have a loose schedule. The second thing is when you are in the house with multiple people, there needs to be an opportunity for everyone to communicate what their needs are. And let me be clear about this, everyone. So grown people, kids, people who pay bills, people who don't pay bills, everybody needs to have time to communicate about what they need. And that could be everything from how much sleep am I feeling like I need? Do I want to play? Do I want to rest? Do I want to have time together? Do I want to have time apart? Right? And so if you have small kids, they might not be able to articulate those things to you. And it's your job as parents to try to monitor. And the other key piece is that I said this last week, I think it's relevant this week too, is how to extend grace. For many of us, our nerves might kind of be on edge by now, right? And so we might be a little sharper in our tone, or our frustration tolerance might be a little low. And so it's important to keep that in mind, to just remember, for the most part, everyone is doing the absolute best that they can. And so if we can try to keep that in mind, then that will help us all, right? We're not all going to get it right. And frankly, anytime you have a couple of people in a house together, there's going to be conflict. But the conflict doesn't have to turn into something that's unsolvable, right? See if you can sit down and figure out, okay, what are people saying they need? So if you have two people who are arguing, feel cramped and somebody just needs to get outside? Is it that you have somebody who's really introverted and they actually need some alone time, but they don't know how to ask for that, right? If you're working from home and you're home with your family, is it that you need to try to dedicate space to work so that your family time can be separate, right? One of the things that has been helpful for me is really trying to organize my working time around the family time, so that when I'm spending spending time with my family, I'm not checking emails. I'm not feeling like I have to be on a conference call or whatever, right? But because we're all here together, I really have to communicate with them about that. So that's saying, okay, guys, I have a conference call from 10 to 2. I'm going to be here in this room, but I really can't talk to you and engage you too much. But at 12 or 2, whatever, when that meeting is over, here's what I'm going to do, right? And so being really intentional about that commitment to try to talk things out, right? If you have multiple adults in the house and you're managing kids, it could be, okay, let's figure out how we as adults can each get the time we need. Maybe we can take turns doing outside time or doing games or whatever. I ordered a bunch of games off of Amazon for us, and we've just kind of committed to in the evenings before and after TV's off, we're just going to play games, right? And the idea is, yes, everybody needs their own individual time, but we also need time together, and we need time to play because one of the, parents I'm sure have heard a bunch of times, and adults have felt this too. I'm bored. Well, yeah, you're probably going to get bored, right? But what can we do to try to enjoy the time that we do have? And that might mean checking in once a week and saying, hey, what are things that people would like to do this week? Now, this doesn't mean that we can do it, because if you want to go to a park and swing on swings, I can appreciate that request, but we're not going to do that because the Rona could be on those swings, right? So maybe we can't do that, but we can go outside, right? And so what does it mean to really honor people's expectations and people's desires as much as we can within a reasonable amount of what we're capable of? So have a schedule. Try to communicate really openly and honestly about what you need. If you need alone time, to just say, hey, I need some time alone. I'm going to go to this room and close the door for XYZ amount of time so people know what's going on. And then when you come back, you're ready to go, right? What we've tried to do is give everybody permission to do that when they need to, and to not really make a big deal about it, right? It doesn't have to be, oh, you don't want to spend time with your family. It's like, no, I've been spending 2 weeks with y'all. I love you a lot. I just need a break, right? And so that goes back to the grace piece. The second thing, so first, have a routine. The second thing, communicate about needs and boundaries. The third thing is, as much as the weather allows, it can really be helpful to get outside. We talked about that last week, just in terms of your personal mental health, but it becomes important when you're too, because people can literally feel kind of cooped up and claustrophobic if you're just in the house all day. So this morning already, my son and I, we went outside. Then he told me he wanted to have lunch outside. Cool, we can do that, right? We were together. It's not like we weren't spending time together, but spending that time together in the fresh air is a lot different than spending that time together sitting in our kitchen or sitting in our living room. So it's a great goal to try to get outside on a daily basis if the weather allows. It looks like it's warming up here, so that would be a good time to just get outside, even if it's just for a walk around the neighborhood. You don't have to get in your car and drive anywhere. It doesn't have to be a big activity, right? We'll probably uncover our patio furniture and just sit outside and be. If you don't have a patio, you can sit on your front stoop, right? If just to get some fresh air can really help. And then if somebody needs that time apart, another way to do that is to do that in the safety of outside, but close to your home. Okay, this is related to what I was talking about earlier with extending grace. But the next piece is to really make allowances for people to have feelings big and small, and to think about ways you can engage in conversations about that, right? So it could be drawing pictures. It could be a conversation with the people in your home about how they're feeling. One of the things that we do sometimes is, there's this tension between wanting to know what's going on and then not wanting to have too much information, which we talked about last time. So if it's one of those times where you decide you want to talk about it, watch the news, talk about the report, and instead of just reporting the facts, also allow people to say, okay, how are we feeling about this? What does it look like? What concerns do we have, right? And to just bring that on the table. right? So our kids are both really ready to go back to school at this point. And so we talked about, yeah, here's why we're not going back to school. Yeah, you're allowed to be sad about that. You're allowed to be mad about that. Aaron's question is, can we talk about tips for maintaining or managing relationships with others and your own sanity when you're quarantined by yourself, dealing in social distancing? So that piece is really important too and related, right? So the one thing is the people inside your house. The other thing is the people who are outside of your house that you want to remain connected to. So the first piece is for those of us who really enjoy that social interaction and are craving it, think about ways you can connect with people virtually, whether it's a video chat call, a FaceTime call, picking up the phone. Maybe you can actually send a letter to someone or a card, right? And so because we have so many different things going on. Some of us are still working, we're managing family relationships, all those kinds of things. You might actually need to schedule those and say, okay, at this time, the four of us are going to get on this group chat or get on this FaceTime to talk. I've seen people doing virtual happy hours, which I think is a great idea, right? A really cool feature that I just started. Are y'all laughing at the virtual happy hour? Another feature that I just found out about that is actually really fun is Netflix has this app. It's a Chrome extension called Netflix Watch Party. I think it's Netflix Party or Netflix Watch Party. Netflix is not running me any money, but if they want to write me a check, I'll let them know where to send it. So anyway, it's called Netflix Party. And if you have Chrome, you have to watch it on your computer, but you can select a movie that you want to watch and click Netflix Party. And there's a link that you can send to any friend who also has Netflix. So then they watch that with you. It's like you're watching it together, but there's a chat option over in the side of your screen so y'all can be chatting about the movie or show as you're watching it. And so I was actually able to do that with a friend who lives all the way in Charlotte that we haven't seen each other in months, but we kind of tried to stay connected through this period. And so things like that, use technology that you have at your disposal. I think I told y'all last week, our neighbors, we haven't been going over to each other's houses or anything like that. But, we'll kind of be outside at the same time and just kind of wait, right? And I think we do have to get creative in this moment. We have to think about what are the ways we can connect with people. I can't hug you. I can't get physically connected with you, but there are ways that we can be in community. And so whatever those virtual options are that are at your disposal, that is something that's really helpful. Okay, Kim says, can you suggest us some books for reading for the personal development by the end of this live? Okay, so I have a couple that I'll suggest now, and then I'm going to go downstairs and look at my library and post some more in the comments. The first thing that comes to mind is basically anything by Brené Brown. She writes a lot about wholeheartedness, vulnerability, courage, leadership. And so her work is really accessible. The one that I just finished now is, which is basically about when you have a failure, what you characterize as a failure, how do you kind of move forward from that? So anything by Brené Brown is good. Anything, if you're a faith-based person, anything by Max Lucado is really good. Max Lucado, Maxlucado. And I'm going to go, Cam, I'm going to look at my library when I finish this and put some other book suggestions in the comments too. Okay. So, Aaron, does that answer your question? I think we really just kind of have to go virtual. I also, this is a really interesting time to dig into creativity and think about if there are ways you can do that in connection with other people too, right? So for instance, I knit and crochet. I haven't done this yet, but as I'm talking, what if I were to just get on FaceTime or Zoom with somebody else who I know knits or crochets and spend that time just kind of talking together, right? We're not in the same room, but we can do things together. And I think that piece is really important. I sent an email to my students a couple of weeks ago saying we are not in proximity, but we are still in community. And I think that piece is so, so, so important right now to remember. Just because we're not in physical space does not mean that we can't connect, and we got to get creative with it. So what if we talked about Netflix party, we talked about the apps. What if you did a cooking party, right? And you and a couple of friends are cooking a meal at the same time, right? Those kinds of things. They're really simple. They're low budget. They don't take a lot of energy, but it can just be helpful to have that experience of connecting with someone around the same time for the same purpose, so to speak. The other piece that I think is important, again, for people who are believers, is think about ways you can connect with your faith community. And a piece of that is church, yes. So, we all have Facebook church on Sunday. There are 50 million. You could have listened to 10 sermons on Sunday if you wanted to. And I think that's great. But think about ways other than that too, right? So is there a Bible study that you can hop on? Is somebody doing live like this, talking about issues? Is there a devotional that you're reading that you could read with some friends? The YouVersion app is an app in the App Store that's a Bible app, has an option where you could start a devotional and then invite friends to join that devotional, right? Maybe that's another way that you can do it. And so I think this is really a time for us to get creative about how we can still, one, keep those relationships intact with people who are not in the house, but also with the people who are in the house with us, keep those relationships intact too by setting some reasonable expectations about what we're going to do for each other and what we're not going to do. Let me take a break for a minute and just check to see if people have questions about it. Hey, Rebecca, I just saw you joined. There was somebody earlier who asked about like personal development books. I suggested a couple, but if you have others, if you could post them in the comments, that would be great. My good psychologist friend, Rebecca Hubbard, just joined, who's brilliant and wonderful in Chicago. And so I'm going to ask her, see if we can crowdsource those resources, but I'll check my library when I get downstairs too. Are there any other questions people have or things you want me to cover related to the relationship piece? I know it's a challenge, but really communication is the key. I'll wait a couple minutes. Okay, so the last thing I'll say is, as we're still kind of unclear in terms of how long this will last, I want us to all keep in mind why we're doing this. We are in our homes, socially distancing, staying away from people because we want to have a life that's worth living later on. And so if we don't do this now, what it means is that more people will have consequences of our inaction. And it's been helpful for me to keep that in mind because frankly, I told y'all last week, I'm the kind of person who's really high activity. And so I'd rather be out and about. I really would. I'd rather be at work. I'd rather be doing something. I'd rather be going to a store. I'd rather be doing anything else. But I have to keep in mind that this is like, we're not just all in our houses for nothing. We are in our houses because we're trying to keep ourselves and others alive. And for me, regardless of the emotional experiences that I'm having in the moment, that is a noble goal. So I'm going to let myself have all the feelings I have because they're valid, but I'm going to keep front of mind that we are all doing this because it's something that we need to do to keep ourselves and each other safe. Okay, Rebecca says Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff is a good book. I haven't read that one, but now I'm going to put it on my list. Okay, so any other things get on the end for today? If you all think it will be next week to just kind of stay on the same page and check in. But, the kind of the takeaways are making sure that we have what we needed, communicating openly about when we need time apart, when we need time together, making sure we get some time outside, and then extending grace for people's emotional experiences. Okay, just kind of remember that we are all doing the absolute best that we can, even if in the moment it doesn't feel that way. And a lot of the conflicts we can not necessarily avoid, but resolve if we just try to talk openly about what we need. I said this earlier, but I want to say it again. Everybody in the house has needs that need to be articulated, right? So this is not just about grown people's needs, it's also about kids' needs. And because they are often less able to express what they need, they really need our support in terms of navigating those spaces, right? And so that means that ultimately we're a team and we need to work together in order to make this work. Okay? Any other questions before we end for today? No? Okay. Well, I'm going to go down to my bookshelf and see if I have any more suggestions. Thank you, Rebecca, for the suggestions for books. I'm sure I have a couple more downstairs that I can recommend. And if you guys want me to do this again next week, just comment or shoot me a message. And if there's some interest, I'll be happy to do it again next week. Take care, and you guys have a good one. Bye-bye.